Here to discuss that and more, former Green Beret and House Armed Services member, Congressman Michael Waltz. Congressman, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, good to be with you. Thanks.
First, I'd just like to get your reaction to today's news of the State Department investigations, and what are your expectations for those?
Well, we'll see. The devil's in the details. Already the State Department spokesman is saying these aren't investigations, they're projects, right? So they're already trying to pull back, the depth of the IG's look into this. And then also the scope is pretty narrowed. It's narrowly focused on the SIV program, which was the special visa for our interpreters that stood and fought with us so bravely, and then also the processing and the resettlement. But what it doesn't get into are the bigger strategic questions that I believe sat with Joe Biden himself, namely, why did the evacuation start so late? So many of us veterans, Republican and Democrat, repeatedly said since April that if you take out your military assets before you get your people out, you're handing those people a death sentence. And yet the State Department didn't even really get serious until August. Why was September 11th chosen? Who chose that date, that magical date, which was a slap in the face to so many veterans and so many victims? Why August 31st? And then the biggest one, as you alluded to, who is lying about the number of people left behind? Blinken has repeatedly testified under oath it was about 100, but then he puts in this little qualifier of that wanted to leave. Well, show me all of these Americans that didn't want to leave. I bet if he was given the choice of leaving his family behind, he wouldn't either, but that doesn't mean he doesn't want to leave, and the numbers just aren't adding up. So there's some bigger issues that I don't think the State Department IG is going to get to.
Well, Congressman, how much do you know about that? Because obviously the media is really not talking about Afghanistan anymore. Obviously very convenient for the White House. What do you know about how many are left behind and still trying to get out and the challenges that they're facing?
Yeah, the Biden White House was eager to turn the page, and their compliant media was happy to help them turn it. But these veterans groups, these grassroots groups, thank God for them. Many of them have quit their jobs. They've exhausted their savings, and they're never going to quit saving fellow Americans and saving our allies that stood and fought with us. And they're still there by the hundreds, if not thousands, when you start counting green card holders and you start counting our allies. So Blinken is lying. He knows it. And the numbers even that they're reporting, they just reported late last week that they've gotten 129 out on their chartered flights. That's not counting the ones that we've gotten across the border or gotten out on private flights. So it just doesn't add up, and the spin is disgusting. And there are still Americans to this day who are desperate to get out, and there's our allies that are being hunted down by the Taliban as we speak.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, I want to switch gears just a little bit, Congressman. We don't have a ton of time, but the deadline within our military for service members to be vaccinated, it's right around the corner. However, the king of the double standard, Joe Biden, he was in D.C. this weekend, caught inside a restaurant, a fancy restaurant, without a mask. And Jen Psaki tried to clean it up today. This is what she had to say.
Well, I think what we were referring to is a photo of them walking out of a restaurant after they had eaten, masks in hand, where they had not yet put them back on yet. So I would say, of course, there are moments when we all don't put masks back on as quickly as we should. But I don't think we should lose the forest through the trees here.
She's wrong. There were definitely photos of him inside the restaurant without a mask on. But what I want to ask you, sir, is what does this say to our brave men and women when the commander-in-chief won't follow the rules, but he expects them to, or they just get kicked out?
Yeah, and this is right in the line of Gavin Newsom and the laundry restaurant, Lori Lightfoot and Nancy Pelosi getting their hair done in the middle of the pandemic, right? I mean, this is just classic poor leadership, hypocrisy. But sadly, it doesn't surprise me. And it's a slap in the face to not just the military members, but so many first responders who are hailed as heroes and now are on the verge of losing their jobs. And why, for the life of me, natural immunity isn't part of this conversation. I can't get a single scientist or a single health official in our government to explain that to me. And that applies to our military, our first responders, and a lot of the health professionals, many of which are being fired in New York, that already have COVID. And if they already have the natural immunity, then why are they then being forced to take this vaccine? It doesn't make any sense, and their hypocrisy is out there for all of America to see.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, Congressman, before we run out of time, obviously the nation mourning today the death of former Secretary of State Colin Powell due to complications from blood cancer as well as COVID-19, of course. Your final thoughts as we mark the passing of Colin Powell.
Well, you know, a lot of conservatives didn't necessarily agree with his politics in his later years, but I can tell you as a Green Beret, we absolutely and deeply admired him as a soldier. I came up as a young lieutenant when he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and all of the prognosticators and all of the media said we were going to lose tens of thousands of soldiers in the first Gulf War. With his leadership and storming Norman Schwarzkopf, it was a huge military success. You know, my heart goes out to his family, but I think he should be deeply admired for his entire life of dedication to this country, and the fact that he lived the American dream, coming here as a son of Jamaican immigrants and rose through the ranks on his merit because he was the smartest, sharpest, and hardest working guy in the room.
Indeed. Well, Congressman Michael Waltz, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us.